On a sunny day at New York's Central Station, a legless beggar notices a strange man who seems to appear out of nowhere. The man, wearing dark sunglasses, stands calmly amid the crowd, watching people rush by. Suddenly, a woman screams, "Someone has shoved her and stolen her purse." The man in sunglasses helps her to her feet just as the police arrive. The officers decide he's the culprit, even though the beggar insists the attackers were gang members who already ran off. Still, the police question the man about his tickets and luggage. He says he doesn't need either and refuses to take off his glasses, claiming the light on this planet is too intense. That response immediately raises suspicions about his sanity, and the police take him away. Despite the beggar repeating that the man didn't come from the platform, he appeared as if out of thin air. A mysterious man appears out of nowhere in a New York station. He claims to be a visitor from a planet called K-PAX. He has no identity, needs no luggage, and says Earth's light is unbearable. But the most disturbing part isn't his story. It's that everything he says seems to make sense. Is he insane, or is he truly not human? A psychiatrist will try to uncover the truth before a deadline marked with terrifying precision. What he finds is deeper than anything he could have imagined. So today we're going to look at K-PAX. That same day, the strange man is sent to a psychiatric hospital in Manhattan. Dr. Mark Powell, finishing his shift, walks down the hall and inexplicably is drawn to the new patient being admitted. The man turns and stares back at him for a long moment. Intrigued, Mark asks to see the man's file. His assistant, Dr. Chakraborty, notes that the patient shows no signs of concussion, tumor, or epilepsy. However, his amnesia and delusions persist. He doesn't consider himself human and claims he's from another world. Notably, a powerful sedative was administered, but he had no reaction, something considered impossible. And there's no name in his file, no record of anyone looking for him, as if he really did come from another planet. Mark invites the patient into his office. The man calls himself Prot and insists he's not sick, though he feels homesick for his planet, K-PAX, located in the Lyra constellation. He says he traveled to Earth using light energy, which is inaccessible to humans. When Mark mentions Einstein's theories, Prot quotes his works, pointing out flaws in some of his conclusions. Mark notices his perfect English, and Prot suddenly utters a string of strange sounds in an unintelligible language, like a bird song. He explains that he only appears human here. On his planet, he has a different form. It's not his first visit to Earth, though he no longer remembers why he came the first time, since Earth is a primitive planet without active tourist routes. After their talk, Prot walks into the common room, where the other patients spend their free time. At first, they eye him with suspicion, but he calmly and kindly describes his planet. He says it's much larger than Earth and has 7 moons. Meanwhile, Dr. Mark Powell returns home, where his wife and children welcome him. Yet even during dinner, his mind is still occupied with work. The next day, Mark plays a recording of his conversation with Prot for his fellow psychiatrists. But the discussion brings no new insight. No one knows how to treat the man, or even what he should be treated for. The following day, Mark resumes his sessions with Prot, who unexpectedly eats a banana with the peel, as if seeing one for the first time. At first, the doctor treats him condescendingly, since aliens aren't rare among psychiatric patients. However, Prot describes K-PAX with such remarkable detail that the doctor doesn't know what to believe. According to Prot, his species reproduces with little enthusiasm, as the process causes unpleasant and even repulsive sensations. Procreation is painful and nauseating. While discussing this, Prot pulls out a notebook and a pencil stub to take notes. He explains that he must record the interesting aspects of the planets he visits, and this part of human relationships had previously gone unnoticed. After the session, Prot tries to approach one of the patients, Bess, but others warn him not to talk to her. She has been in the clinic since childhood, after a house fire, and hasn't spoken to anyone since. Another patient, Doris, refuses to eat the hospital food or leave her room. Prot asks for permission to enter and, once inside, compliments her. She confesses she's not crazy, just a romantic. Meanwhile, Dr. Chakraborty examines Pratt's eyes, which are indeed extremely sensitive to light. Pratt himself claims he can see ultraviolet light, though Mark doesn't believe it. He closes the windows and shuts off the lights, and finally Pratt removes his glasses. He continues speaking about the inhabitants of K-PAX, who don't form families, as children are raised by society as a whole. Because of this, there are no special bonds between parents and children. There are also no authorities or punitive systems on the planet, as its people live by principles of kindness. He knows that humans live by the rules of an eye for an eye and a life for a life, but the universe long ago understood the futility of that logic. Even here on Earth, there were Buddha and Christ who preached kindness, but no one listened. Aliens find it hard to understand how humanity hasn't already gone extinct. Later at home, Mark finds his brother-in-law Steve visiting. Steve works at an observatory, and Mark asks him to arrange a meeting between Pratt and reputable astronomers. He hopes to prove the planet doesn't exist and asks Steve to prepare a detailed astronomy questionnaire. The next day, arriving at the clinic, Mark sees a patient named Howie sitting by the window. When asked what he's doing, Howie says Pratt told him to find the bluebird of happiness. If he completes 3 tasks Pratt gave him, he believes he'll be healed. Mark looks for Pratt and finds him speaking with another patient, Ernie, who's afraid of breathing air. Pratt calmly reassures him, saying it's safe and that if he follows his advice, he'll get better. The doctor gets angry, saying it's wrong to promise healing, but Pratt replies that every being can heal itself. On K-PAX, they've known this for thousands of years. He challenges Mark by asking why, if he's a real doctor, he hasn't cured those patients. Mark has no answer. Pratt hands him a page with his answers to Steve's cosmic questions, hoping they satisfy Mark. Later, Steve calls, shocked. Pratt has precisely described the location of K-PAX, a newly discovered planet found by Steve's superior. But Steve is sure no one should know about that discovery yet. Soon after, Mark takes Pratt to meet with a panel of top astronomers. At first, they treat him with heavy skepticism, especially when he refuses to explain the principle of interstellar travel. Pratt believes humanity would misuse such knowledge, possibly destroying the planet. However, when asked to pinpoint the location of K-PAX, the scientists are stunned by the accuracy of his answers. They're especially amazed by his exact calculation of K-PAX's orbit within its binary system in Lyra. The strangest part is that the possibility of planets in that region was only recently discovered by one of the astronomers, and the data hasn't yet been published, known only by a few scientists worldwide. The experts are baffled, unable to explain what's happening. Mark suggests the man could be a genius. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Howie suddenly sees a bluebird through the window. His cries attract patients and staff, and soon the entire hospital gathers by the windows. People clap like children, wave their hands, laugh, and hug each other. Mark, hearing the commotion, rushes over and is stunned to see a bright blue bird outside. He realizes it's just a common blue jay, but the change it has sparked in the patients is astonishing. Doris, who had never left her room, came out and walked to the window, while Bess, who hadn't spoken in years, looked at Pratt and called him the bluebird of happiness in person. The next morning, a patient named S, who often imagines strange smells, asks Pratt to take him to K-PAX. Pratt expresses regret that S cannot smell the flowers of his world, but says he can only bring one person with him. Later, Mark confronts Pratt, upset because many patients have grown agitated over his promise, arguing over who deserves to go. Pratt explains again that he said only one can go, and he'll choose the most deserving when the time comes. The doctor feels increasingly puzzled. When and how does Pratt plan to return to his planet? Pratt calmly tells him he'll leave on July 27th at exactly 5:51. Mark is stunned by the precision and, still half asleep, wonders what that date could mean. He wakes up in the night and listens to the recordings of their talks again and again until he realizes something terrible must have happened to Pratt exactly 5 years ago, on a July 27th. A trauma so great that it shattered his psyche. Mark knows he must reach the man's real identity before the deadline. The next day, Mark and his wife invite Pratt to their home, hoping that a normal family setting might trigger a revelation. At first, Pratt behaves calmly, but suddenly, upon seeing the family dog, he runs to it despite the family's attempts to stop him. The dog, who usually dislikes everyone, leaps into Pratt's arms, to everyone's amazement. Pratt starts barking as if speaking with the dog, then translates. The dog asks the kids to stop hiding his favorite slipper. He also says the dog has trouble hearing in his left ear, so they shouldn't scare him on that side. Later, Mark's wife serves Pratt a fruit salad since he doesn't eat meat. Pratt walks through the garden, plays with the children, and admires the flowers. Back inside, he looks at family photos and asks about a young man in one of them. Learning he's Mark's son from a previous marriage, Pratt speaks to Mark's wife about the meaning of family. She explains that family means deeply caring for loved ones. Pratt replies that on K-PAX, families don't exist, so he can't fully grasp those feelings. Back in the garden, Pratt starts pushing Mark's daughter on a swing, and Mark sees he does it like someone used to the routine. Pratt continues playing with the kids and acts completely normal, until suddenly, the sprinkler system turns on. Something shifts in protocol. He's transformed. He grabs Mark's daughter and tries to shield her from the water jets, yelling about the dangers of water and frightening the girl. Mark and the others have to restrain him, and only when the water stops does Pratt calm down instantly. Mark realizes something traumatic lies buried deep in Pratt's mind. He describes the event to his supervisor, Dr. Claudia Villars. When Claudia suggests Pratt might have violent tendencies, Mark disagrees, saying Pratt was sincerely trying to protect his daughter from something terrible. Mark deduces that water must be linked to the event that broke Pratt's mind. He proposes using hypnotic regression. Villars objects, warning the method is risky, but Mark convinces her, insisting time is running out before Pratt's self-imposed deadline. Who knows what might happen that day? Yet while Mark and Villars discuss the matter, Pratt vanishes. Other patients calmly say Pratt went to Greenland to finish his report. They assure Mark he'll be back soon, so there's no need to worry. They search the clinic but can't find him. Only 3 days later, Pratt suddenly reappears in the garden, telling Mark he's been traveling, mostly to the north. Mark, upset, insists that Pratt undergo deep hypnosis. During the session, Mark uncovers disturbing memories from Pratt's past. Pratt recalls a silver coffin that belonged to his friend's father, who died in a work accident at the place where they kill cows. His pulse rises 10 beats, clearly showing his discomfort. Mark urges him to go deeper into the memory. Pratt calms down and begins talking again about K-PAX. He reveals that he used to visit his friend often. When his friend got sick, his father bought him a telescope, and every night they would talk about the stars. But now Pratt says his friend no longer cares about the stars and only calls him when something bad happens. Pratt starts to become agitated again, and Mark is warned that continuing might be dangerous. The doctor brings him out of the trance. Later, Mark tells his secretary to look up the addresses of all slaughterhouses in the U.S., excluding major cities where stars can't be seen. Meanwhile, the clinic patients debate who Pratt will choose to go to K-PAX. Howie suggests a writing contest, so Pratt can get to know each of them better and decide who is most worthy. The patients eagerly begin working on their essays. Pratt agrees to another hypnosis session. This time he doesn't go as far, but he sees his friend. However, he firmly refuses to say his name, though he does mention the year 1985. When asked his age, he gives an imaginary number. Pratt explains that his friend is 17 years old, but his girlfriend is expecting a child. His friend will get married, have kids, and repeat the same mistakes that destroyed his father. Mark asks Pratt to move 2 weeks ahead in his memories and allows him to walk through them. Pratt describes that it is now 1991. This time, his friend called him without any specific reason. His friend is a knocker, someone who stuns cows with a blow to the head. He lives in a small house surrounded by trees, near a river. He is married to Sarah and they have a daughter named Rebecca, whose birthday is coming up. After the session, Mark is reviewing his findings when he's told that Howie nearly strangled Ernie. Mark rushes to the patient and finds a calm, radiant man who explains he was choking Ernie under Pratt's instructions. Having come back from the edge of death, Ernie now understands there is no need to fear everything or everyone, because death is always near, and humans can't change that. He can now sleep on his stomach, eat fish with bones, and swallow large pills. He says he feels wonderful. Howie is also pleased to have healed a friend. Another of Pratt's tasks has been completed, and Howie is confident that he too will be healed. Mark constantly thinks about Pratt's case and continues the hypnosis sessions. One day he dares to mention the date July 27th, but Pratt assures him that he's in K-PAX collecting mushrooms. Suddenly he hears his friend calling him and runs back to Earth. Pratt sees his friend by the river behind his house. He takes off his clothes because he wants to leave, having done something terrible. Pratt refuses to tell Mark what happened, saying not even his friend wanted to know. When Sarah and Rebecca are mentioned, Pratt has a violent outburst. He screams, cries, and Mark is forced to wake him from the trance. Later, when Mark returns home, a pencil stub taken from Pratt falls from his pocket. He examines the numbers written on it and traces them to the store where the pencil was purchased. This leads him to a small town, where he finds a news article dated July 28th, 5 years ago, describing a tragedy in the family of Robert Porter. Mark flies to the town. The sheriff takes him to the old Porter house and tells him the horrific events that happened there 5 years earlier. The house has been abandoned ever since. No one wants to live there. At the time, the family consisted of Robert, a slaughterhouse worker, his wife Sarah, and their daughter Rebecca. As the sheriff speaks, Mark feels as if he's witnessing it himself. While Robert was at work, an ex-convict broke into the house. What began as a robbery turned into something far worse. The intruder assaulted Sarah and then killed both her and Rebecca. When Robert returned and found the killer there, the strong man snapped his neck like a twig. He then went to the river and threw himself into the water. The body was never found, but Robert was declared dead. Mark is so moved by the story that he can't hold back tears. The sheriff shows him the river and asks him to keep the man's identity a secret, saying he has suffered enough. Mark returns home and, looking at his family, realizes that family is what makes life worth living. Meanwhile, the patients at the clinic throw a party to celebrate Pratt's departure and demand that he reveal who he's taking to K-PAX. Howie collects the written essays while Mark shares a drink with Pratt. Pratt advises Mark to spend more time with his family and invite his son to the celebration. He tells Mark that humans could inhabit 50 planets and that all are connected to each other. But on K-PAX, things are different. If Pratt doesn't return, no one will miss him. Mark begs Pratt to stay with them, but Pratt cannot. He must finish his report, though he regrets losing his pencil. Mark hands him his own pen and shows him a photo, trying to prove that Pratt is Robert Porter. But Pratt refuses to acknowledge it. Meanwhile, S asks a direct question, wanting to know who Pratt will take with him. Pratt announces that whoever falls asleep first will get a bonus point. The patients rush to their rooms. Pratt gives Howie his final task: stay and be ready for whatever may come. An exhausted Mark returns home and falls asleep on the couch, determined not to miss Pratt's departure. The hospital falls into silence and only Pratt remains seated on his bed. The security guards nervously watch the monitors, debating whether he'll truly leave or not. The scheduled time arrives, but the doctor is late. The sun begins to rise as Mark runs up the stairs. Pratt takes off his glasses and places them on the table. At that moment, the security cameras shut down. Sunlight floods Pratt's room, and just then, Doris walks out, delaying Mark's entrance. When he finally bursts into the room, he finds it empty. Then he spots Pratt unconscious under the bed. Pratt is wheeled through the hospital corridors on a stretcher, but those around him seem not to recognize him anymore. Shortly after, the news breaks that Bess has vanished from her room, meaning Pratt chose her. In her essay, Bess had written that she had no home. Sometime later, Mark pushes Pratt, now unable to speak or move, in a wheelchair, but he feels that Pratt can still hear and understand everything. So Mark tells him that Howie now works at a library, and Ernie has become a crisis hotline counselor. Only Bess remains missing. When Mark asks Robert if he knows what really happened on July 27th, Robert only smiles mysteriously. Mark promises to wait as long as it takes until he's ready to share his secret. Later at the airport, Mark reunites with his eldest son, and they reflect that, despite everything, they are still the closest people to each other. During the final scenes, we hear Pratt's voice. On K-PAX, they've long understood that the universe expands, contracts, and then expands again. And it will keep doing so forever. Everything will always repeat. That's why it's crucial to correct our mistakes, because there won't be another chance. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Don't forget to comment your favorite part down below. Well, see you next time. Bye-bye.